Hello, welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Brother Brat, released in 1944. It's the 435th in the series, and it's directed by Frank Tashlin. You can find this beautiful new restoration on the Looney Tunes Collector's Choice Volume 2 Blu-ray set, and I'll have a link below to that set. It is under copyright, so you will not find this short on YouTube, it will just get taken down. But in case you haven't seen this one, it takes place in World War II, where it brings up an interesting question, with the women going to work in place of the men who are sent out to fight the good fight overseas. Who's going to look after the kids? Well, in this case, one of the women decides to go to Porky randomly and asks him to look after her baby Butch, and a lot of weird things end up happening. So, as usual, not really too much to it, but it's a pretty interesting one. I do love the idea of this. First up, you're going to see is a re-edit of the original commentary I did with my good friends Austin Kelly and my editor for this video, Blue Genocide, before I had to take that down due to copyright. And then after that, you'll hear some new thoughts from me as I go through the short, especially because now we've got this brand new restoration. So, without further ado, let's get into it. With me today are my good friends Blue Genocide and Austin Kelly. Say hi, guys.
Hi, we're here to talk about this very lovely, very funny cartoon, scripted 15 months before its release in summer of 44, scripted in spring of 43, by the way.
Let's put this into context. At the time of World War II, with men not fighting to war, women basically picked up the slack, and they were working in places like, in this case, it was, well, they call it Blockheed, even though it's a parody of Lockheed and all that. And we can see a parody of Flash Superman right there as well, you know, Superwoman kind of thing. It did raise an interesting problem. With the women now going to work, well, who's going to keep house and who's going to raise the kids? Because that's what they were expected to do back then. So it's an interesting idea. And of course, Porky is available to be a babysitter.
Wow, look at that. I wish I knew who animated that.
Yeah, it's a really good, interesting reaction here. So yeah, Blockheed, as you can see, that there's, like I said, based off Lockheed. But this is actually Tashlin's last Porky Pig short, and Porky is wearing something he normally wouldn't have on. He's wearing pants.
It's weird. I guess it's just to give him the feel of a regular civilian, because that's kind of what he's supposed to be in this cartoon. But I mean, that's just my wild guess. But you know, it's Tashlin, really unpredictable. You don't know what's going to happen. What
are your thoughts on this baby character? I mean, I know this looks like Baby Austin, but no, just kidding. I kid.
Oh, I kind of like him. I think he's pretty funny. It's always, it's kind of the classic expectation and then reality sort of gag where you think he's tiny and he's this cute little innocent baby, and then you open the, roof or whatever, hood on the stroller, and he's just playing cards. About 14 years after this cartoon was released, another film by Tashlin was released, a feature film featuring Jerry Lewis called Rockabye Baby, and it's very similar to this one in the sense that it's a guy, just a regular guy, being forced to watch these kids, and he's got no idea what's happening, and it's really funny. I highly suggest you check that out.
McKimson must have been a big fan of this cartoon because he used this idea quite a bit. Easter Eggs was the first one that came to my mind, with a baby character, not being a sweet, innocent baby.
There's also the Daffy from 48, Upstanding Sitter, where Daffy's got to take care of that little chick, I think.
Now, this is just disturbing. These baby pin-ups. That's just disturbing. That is just probably one of the most disturbing things in Looney Tunes history. And I've seen really weird things. Wow, all this great animation here. That'll be a good one to freeze frame, actually. Him trying to get the baby off his finger.
A lot of weird animators going around in the Tashlin unit around this time. Of course, you have the mainstays. There's Artie Davis, there's Izzy Ellis, there's Cal Dalton. Weird Terry Toons guy named George Canada was credited on one cartoon and then never really mentioned again. And then, obviously, we've talked about Ray Patton, who was a Disney guy who was going uncredited around this time. So yeah, a lot of confusing stuff. But I do know this scene here with Porky at the book, and he's reading Don't Hold a Grudge, and then kid chops him down with the axe. I think that's Izzy Ellis. That's a lot of fun animation right there. Yeah, look at that.
As we wind up this cartoon, Blue, you haven't seen this too much, I think, but what are your thoughts from what you've seen so far?
It's cute. Like, it's not my favorite Tashlin, but that's cute. I want to say though, him having pants may have been a shot at Schlesinger.
It's not one of my favorites, but it's a great cartoon.
I remember seeing an ad for a few of the funny bits in it, and now that I've seen the whole cartoon, I'm like, oh, okay. It's okay. It's okay. So those are my original thoughts. And again, I just loved doing all those commentaries back in the day. But when we did that commentary, we had to use a Laserdisc print, which wasn't the worst thing in the world. I mean, the worst things to watch are those buddy shorts. Yes, I know they're terrible anyway, but in terms of quality, those buddy shorts were like 5th generation tapes in some cases. So it wasn't too bad, but watching it now in this restoration, it really is a revelation, especially in the beginning. I mean, look at the colors when we open it up. Just amazing, and they really, really pop here. It's like watching this short for the first time. This was the first thing I watched when I got that Looney Tunes Collector's Choice Blu-ray set, and my goodness, it's fantastic. And it's a shame that it took so long for this one to be restored, but better late than never. It's all done now. And again, with this being a Tashlin short, you're going to find a lot of shots being cinematic, and this is no exception, especially in the opening. Now, the voice of the newsreel is Paul Regan, who also does the Winston Churchill voice later on. And you got Mel Blanc, of course, doing Porky and Baby Butch, and you've also got Bea Benaderet doing the voice of the mother. But this whole opening section, there's a lot of limited animation, but the effect is really good here. You don't need this part fully animated. It's very stylized, and it gets its point across really well. And again, the color really just pops out. But you know what this bit all reminds me of? It's those Fleischer Superman shorts, just in terms of its look. And sure enough, we even see a parody of it when we see the Superwoman shot. But I wonder if Tashlin was directly inspired by the Fleischer shorts to actually do his version when it came to doing the opening of this. I don't know, but it's possible. It's definitely possible. So up until now, the newscaster is talking all serious, just like you would with a newsreel. But then you got that wonderful punchline when everything turns black, where it's, where to put the kids.
Problems, obstacles, and difficulties, except one. Where the heck to put the kids while she's working?
And so such a wonderful punchline after all the seriousness in the lead up to it, because there really isn't any gags in that opening bit, nor should there be. The fact that it's played so straight means the rest of the short is even funnier, in my opinion. Then we see the mother, who for some reason loves to only wear this welding shield for most of the time, and eventually she does reveal her face, but just because you're a welder doesn't mean you're going to wear a welding shield all the time, but anyway, whatever. But I do like that even when the shield is down, she's still such an expressive character, and I do love the design of this woman here. It's such a strong character, and thankfully these days women, unlike back then where they were expected to keep house and raise babies and all that, they are able to now have a choice whether they want to work in a factory or not. This short is a time capsule, really, of what it was like back then, where the men were the providers and the women, well, they're just expected to keep house and raise the babies. But it's all different now, which, of course, it's a good thing, right? So the funny thing about this short I just realized is, why on earth does she go to Porky Pig's house? There's no real reason for her to be there. Did she just pick a random house? Nor do we need a reason, okay? I'm not saying there should have been one, but it's just weird. It just seems like, oh yeah, you. Are you a patriotic person? Well, if you are, you need to look after my baby so I can do all this welding so we can fight the good fight. And she makes a pretty convincing speech. And when she shows off her badge, that reference, Blockheed, that's a reference to Lockheed. That was a manufacturing plant which was manufacturing arms for the war at the time. And during the conversation, I like how her welding shield just keeps hitting Porky on the head as she's talking all patriotic.
You want to help the United Nations, don't you? Shh. You want those planes should roll off the assembly line, don't you? You want those Nazis and Japs bombed off the earth, don't you?
But once again, why she picked him, I don't know. But anyway, so she asks him a question regarding Hitler. And Porky then struggles to say Hitler, so he ends up saying Schicklgruber, which is hilarious, by the way, which is even harder to say than Hitler, which obviously that's the joke. But the reason he says that name as well is because that is Hitler's father, so he then tries to say Tojo, but then he's run over by this woman anyway, and that's a reference to the Prime Minister of Japan at the time, who was later on convicted of war crimes.
I hate Hitler, Schicklgruber, and Tojo.
Well, then mind my kid. Here, this'll help you.
Now, here's a very obscure reference I did not realize at the time, and I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole with this one, but I'll keep it brief. So that Pistol P Mama, that's a reference to the World War II song Pistol Packing Mama. And there was even a plane flown by the Women's Air Force service pilots called Pistol Packing Mama, and there's even a photo that shows this. So it was just so interesting, that one little innocent line. These days, people might look at it and they will have no idea, but back then, it was a pretty popular song, so people would have definitely known the reference then, but yeah, it's almost something that's lost to time. I love how once the baby's dropped off, the mum just flies away, so she makes those airplane noises, and of course, Porky just says,
It's what you say. She's a character.
she's a character, and starts laughing, which sets up something later on, but he does that. So we're just under half of the short, and we finally see the baby. And again, Tashlin in his 40 shorts, he likes to play time in a lot of them, where he'll start off really, really slow. Like I Got Plenty of Mutton, that's probably another good example of that. But then the rest of the short would be really, really fast. So we see the baby, and we hear the greatest version of Rockabye Baby ever. And I don't want any convincing otherwise, that is the best version. And we hear the saying, "Let's not get nosy, bub," and that's a reference to Red Skelton, who said that in his radio show at the time.
Let's not get nosy, Bob.
Then we get the punchline of what Porky said before, which, he's a character too. Starts laughing, and I love in for a split second by the frame, Porky's face just turns into a frown.
Hey, he's a character too.
I thought that was absolutely hilarious. And then we see an angle where Porky walks after winking, and when you see shots like that, that's unmistakably Tashlin. He does that in all of his shorts, and even for the shorts where you don't see the director's credit for Tashlin, which happens in the later half of his footage output, you know it's Tashlin. You can see all the traits right there. I did spot one weird animation error on Porky's pants, where it just kind of blurs. I don't know what happened there. I mean, does it ruin the short? Well, of course it does. That means this is 0 out of 10. This is completely unwatchable now. Of course I kid, but I just thought it was interesting that I see that error going, okay. I'm not sure how that got through, although to be fair, it would have costed them a lot of money to reshoot it, so they probably just put it through and people wouldn't have noticed it anyway. But I gotta tell you, the design of this baby is one of the funniest baby designs I've ever seen in animation. Especially when he says,
Not butch. Just plain butch.
but I'm glad he's only one short though. Some might have said, oh, you could probably reuse him for other shorts, and you could, but honestly, he would get rolled real fast. I think he works perfectly in this done in one short. So he then mocks Porky's voice, again, absolutely hilarious, and then he just happens to have an anvil, and he just drops it on Porky, who falls through the floor along with it. I mean, how big is Porky's house anyway? He just falls through a couple of floors, so Porky is living the good life, I'd say. Not quite like the penthouse in an earlier short, but here he lives in a pretty decent house, you know? So Porky goes back to the book, and it says, Touchy isn't here, which is kind of a weird gag. It's kind of like a Tex Avery type thing, but anyway. But it now suggests to give the kid a cat, and Porky just buys a cat. And again, there's no explanation needed for this, but what? He just goes to the pet store and just decides to get a cat? I'm assuming that's what he does. There's no indication that he actually owned this cat before, or maybe he did. I don't know. But it's kind of a weird thing, isn't it? But anyway, I thought it was funny. But there's one bit here, and I'm pretty sure Tashlin was being cheeky here, how Porky's like, play with the cat, but he says play with this, well, then he adds at the end, pet.
Here, Butch, here, play with this here, pussy. Pet.
So, I think Tashlin knew what he was doing in that scene, and it somehow went past the Hays Code. But yeah, this bit is hard to watch where the kid is being really mean and treating the poor cat like that. I guess you're supposed to really hate this kid, right? But anyway, I'm not a fan of cats being tortured in such a way. I don't think it's particularly funny, but, well, it's okay. It's just a cartoon cat. Although I do like the animation of him spinning around. That's pretty funny, I've got to say. Now, in easily one of the most disturbing moments in Looney Tunes history, as we pointed out in the commentary, Esquire Jr. So first of all, that's a reference to Esquire magazine, which was a men's magazine. It wasn't a pornographic magazine or anything like that. It was basically a men's magazine that had fashion and things of that nature, but it also had pin-ups done by artists of very attractive women. And if you look at these disturbing baby pictures, it was done in pretty much the same style. And yes, if I could live without seeing those baby images again, yeah, I would definitely take that. It's pretty bad. It's very disturbing. So as mentioned in the track, if you freeze frame the bit where Butch bites Porky's finger, we got some interesting choices in the drawings, and yet it works. See, Clamper would do some similar stuff in his shorts, and yet he would do it in a completely different way. Yet Tashlin's doing it here, and it still works. And yet, you can tell the difference between the two. I like how it all then just pauses for a moment just so Porky can reference back to the book, and I like how the book says something really useless, and then Porky just continues on trying to get this kid off his finger. So Butch ends up going into the kitchen where we hear a lot of noise. I'm guessing to save a bit of cash, we only hear the end result of all that mayhem of Butch causing a bit of a mess there. But we see then Butch comes out. He first does the Groucho Marx line. Of course, you realize this means war. And then he impersonates UK Prime Minister Winston Churchill. And I love the Churchill impression. It's fantastic.
Of course, you know, this means war.
We will fight until Hitler and his Nazi gangsters suffer disastrous, overwhelming, and complete defeat.
I do wonder when they actually got Paul Regan in the recording booth, did he just say, oh, I can do this? I would assume it would have been done in the same recording session, but anyway, I'm not sure. If you guys know more about that actor, let me know in the comments below. Like, was he known for impressions such as Reagan? Let me know. So then we see a chase with some really wild Scott art poses. So Scott art was the technique that was used by Tashlin at this time, whereas squares, ovals, and triangles. And you can see a lot of that, especially in Butch as the chase scene goes on. But that door gag always kills me, where he pulls on the handle, but then just breaks through the door anyway. It's hilarious. So then we see, don't hold a grudge. The kid's ready to bury the hatchet in the book, and boy, the irony of that is hilarious. As Butch is holding a real hatchet, of course, and yet Butch is somehow strong enough to create cracks all over. Really strong kid, strong like his mum, I guess. So then the chase continues with some wild animation of Butch even becoming a saw blade in a moment, and the cat then notices Butch and does a hilarious scream. I'm pretty sure that vocal at the end of the scream is a sound effect that Clamper did, because Keith Scott did note in his Cartoon Voices book that Clamper did a vocal effect in this. I'm pretty sure that's it, but if not, let me know in the comments below. So we see the whole house is cracked, and we getting things pushed to the absolute extreme here with just absolute chaos with this kid, where the mother comes back to pick up the kid and asks, hey, did you use the book? And Porky's like, yes, I used the book, and it didn't work. And of course, we end up with some child punishment, which would not be seen acceptable today, but it's still a funny punchline in any case, as long as you understand that that was something that was done at the time. So this was a great one to revisit. It's not Tashlin's best, but it's still really funny, and there's some amazing bits of animation, and it actually touched upon a topic in World War II that really I've never seen discussed. I think this is the only place I've ever even seen where they bring up the issue of, well, if you want women to work, what are the women going to do with the kids? So it's definitely an interesting one in terms of a World War II time capsule short. This one gets 8.5 out of 10. It looks amazing, especially in the beginning, and this new restoration absolutely delights. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, take care.
What's the matter? Didn't you use the book?
Yeah, but it didn't work.
Maybe you did use it right. It always works for me.
That's all, folks.